Joseph, if you can start talking, please, so I can check the volume.
Check, check. Chinese, checkers, potatoes.
I like where this is going already. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dodgeball Podcast. In this episode, we're going to go ahead and continue with part 3 of the OG West Coast series. Here to join me once again is Kelly, Mark, Serge, and Joe. I'm not going to butcher any of your last names, but welcome, guys. Thanks for coming back on.
Thanks, Steve.
So we're kind of talking about where we left off last time, and I think we stopped towards 2010, just looking at the notes here, and the notation says just at the beginning of the NDL's fall. And so we're going to kind of get from 2010 to about 2014, just when Elite entered the scene. But aside from that, I mean, let's just dive right in. Joe, since, again, just going to look at you because this was your baby. So where do you want to start? 2010, where were we?
Like you said, we can start in 2010. And I guess we speak of NDL this time, being as it was probably the main tournament each year that most dodgeballers look forward to. But just kind of one thing I want to point out from 2010, I guess, forward, I think a lot of the dodgeball players who were seasoned and played at a competitive level definitely saw a downfall in the NDL. And yeah, I think there were a lot of situations that kind of really point that out and that were very public and noticeable throughout the dodgeball community. So I don't really want to beat a dead horse because I think it's really kind of public knowledge. I'll let maybe Serge wants to elaborate on some of that. But
I think it's actually really public knowledge because, I mean, I get asked on a almost weekly basis.
You're saying you don't think it's public knowledge?
I don't.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I just have so many people ask me, like, what is the story of, like, how it fell down, and I have to explain to them, like, it was a certain number of factors, and, like, a lot of it's people attribute to me, but, like, I genuinely think it was another thing. But anyways, we continue.
Yeah, no, it was, I mean, there's a bunch of factors, and I'm definitely down to go into them now. I've been talking about it in teasers and people coming up to me like, hey, when are you guys going to finish part 3? And then also looking at every single 50, 60 comment long thread. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. So 2010, I agree with Joe, I think was the height of the NDL. Like, that was when you were getting the most teams. That was when you're going to get the teams that were the most established and most competitive. And you're also getting the largest pool of other countries coming in, Denmark, England, Australia.
Well, Mark, I think I'd have to disagree with that part. I think 2008 was really the pinnacle of NDL because there were close to 50 teams at that point.
Really? And
there was still an announced prize cash money for first place. But I think 2010 was really the turning point of when it really started the demise of NDL. And, that was kind of the segue. I was trying to get to that point. But, as Mark said, there are a lot of people who ask those questions. And I've always just said, what, it's a 30-minute conversation. Maybe I just don't want to deal with it. So I'll just pass it by. But this might be a great time to talk about it. Part of the reason I think a lot of the seasoned dodgeball players really felt was that the way the tournaments were run, it wasn't really geared towards the players. And I think a lot of us will agree with that. And I think we almost felt cheated, but at the time it was really the only thing we could go to, so we still went to it. So it was kind of something that it was a compromise in at least my eyes of what was available versus the quality of the tournament.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
I think so. It sucks to say that this is maybe one of the things that kind of put a spotlight on it, but I think the dwindling of the cash payouts really brought a lot of focus from the players on looking at what the NDL really stood for. And that started as soon as, I think, 2008. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I think in 2008 was when we saw like a major cut to the cash payouts. And
yeah, it went from
6,000
to 1,000.
Right, in 2008. And I think there was still a cash payout in 2009.
Yep.
And then in 2010, I think that was the first year where the cash payout was totally cut. And I remember that because, well, here's this funny story. When we were all at the tournament, and there was, the beginning presentation from Ed Prentice about, how it's a great year and it continues to grow. And it had been growing. So that was all true. It was at the same time the first year that he decided to cut the cash payout completely. And it was like one of the biggest years, as Joe mentioned. And it was Joe who mentioned, who asked the pointed question in the beginning of the tournament, how much do the winners get? And so that that really didn't sit well with Ed. But it did bring focus to something that the players began to see as, well, okay, maybe this is not an organization that really has the interests of the players in mind. And again, I don't want, it sucks to kind of, use money as sort of the thing to identify, but there were a lot of other things that began to come to light. We started noticing that, okay, playtime was getting cut short and logistics weren't really, put together in an efficient way. And there's just so many other things that I'm sure we're going to get into over the course of this conversation. But I think that's when we started kind of noticing, okay, there's something going on here.
Let's dig into the cash real quick.
I would also have to say with that, Serge, is that I think a lot of players are okay with a lesser cash prize or, different prizes in different tournaments. The problem with the NDL was that the prices were going up. Yes. And then there was no cash prize.
Exactly.
And so it wasn't even that, okay, well, we got a better facility, so we understand there's more money going to that. There's more things going for the players. Okay, great. More money is going to that. It was nothing. It was the same stuff, more money out of our pocket, and no money going back to the winners.
No, Kelly's 100% right. So it wasn't the fact that he started cutting the cash prizes that made us kind of rethink the whole organization. It was exactly what Kelly said. At the same time, prices were going up. I remember that if you played both co-ed and open, you were paying close to $400 in registration fees, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it was something like 145 or 165 for the first division.
No, 185. 185.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 185 or 195. It was just shy of 200, and then each additional division was like $30 on top of that.
Right.
There was 6 divisions by the end. I think by 2012 there was like six.
No,
divisions.
there was a hell of a lot more divisions than you think, because they also had. So they had open 8.5, they had Stinger, they had open foam, then they had women's foam, women's 8.5, they had co-ed foam, co-ed 8.5. Then they also had the open gym division, they had last man standing, they had pro, and then there was something else I'm missing.
The taco bar.
Got like 9 or 10 divisions.
And that would always change every year.
Yeah.
It would always change.
I think the thing with that too is it sounds great, like awesome, more divisions, but there weren't more days.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was swindling us into this idea of you're going to get more play time. But the reality is, unless you are adding time into the tournament, it's the same amount of time. It's just divided into more divisions, and you're paying more because you're paying for each one of those divisions.
Well, you remember the schedule, and like I'll preface this as like my first year was 2010, and I showed up with hot sauce, which was Dave Benedetto, myself, Ish Blanco, Jesse Guberman, Harrison Randall, and Eric Audet. Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute.
All day.
we had the red T-shirts from Walmart that Dave cut the sleeves off and gave it to him and grabbed the black marker and wrote our name, which we ended up taking second, mind you.
You told this story before, just saying.
Right, who
This-
took first?
This is public knowledge.
Rampage beat us in an absolute.
What was that?
Someone just mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounded like it.
Huh, all right. I'll allow it.
But I remember my first time because it was our second. The people of LA. It was our second competitive tournament. A couple months prior, we had decided, like Vince, Ish, and I had decided that we wanted to play competitive dodgeball. We went to the tournament in Phoenix held by AZ Dodgeball, not Phoenix Dodgeball, and they were telling us about the NDL, and little did we know that like Dave had been going to this all along, but not telling anybody in LA, which was weird. So I remember showing up and it being, I remember it was half of the gym in their Tarkanian, and it was the first time I had really seen like a much higher level caliber of player, like because at that time, like between Vince Ish and I, it was just mopping the field here in LA, and it was easy. This was still when it was just like in LA, it wasn't athletes, it was just hipsters playing sports. So like if you had any athletic ability, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. But it was the first time where I'd seen like true competition. But I just remember that they would say, okay, here's 2 hours for this division, 2 hours for this division.
Yeah.
And what they would do is they'd pull you together, and then it was almost like being put in a playpen and less of a court. And it was kind of like, okay, you three teams, like when you win, just switch. And no one took score. And I just thought, like, there's no way that this can be like the pinnacle. Like, mind you, I was having the time of my life. But there was just something off to me about like, this isn't the way it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so we played in a pool and we just like round robin. And I remember the first time seeing like Lucas Boyle playing for Seattle Reign.
Is this 2010, Mark, you're talking about? Yes?
Yeah, 2010.
I feel like the pools weren't as bad. They really started to suck after 2011 and 12. And I'm glad you brought that up because maybe you guys can give me your perception of this. But like when we were in those pools, it was like, cool, we drove all the way from Vegas, paid all this money to play against other Arizona teams and maybe one Cali team. Like we're not playing against the Portland guys.
I remember when there were 6 divisions, he had 2 hour, or the commissioner at the time had 2 hour intervals of round robin, and all we did was play Arizona teams. And I was like, oh, that's great. Like, how about the other 20 teams that were there that we never get to play against, and we're stuck with the guys that we play against twice a year at Grand Canyon State games.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I remember my team, we played Seattle and Canada. And those were the other 2 teams we played in our 3-team pool.
So you got some variety.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of speaks to the bigger issue that at least, my assumption is, and I think I can speak for a lot of people when I say that, the main focus from Ed's point of view was to treat the organization, to treat the event as a business. He was thinking about, he was raising costs. He was cutting play time. He was splitting up the divisions in all of these strange ways that at the end of the day made it so that the costs would go up. And there wasn't too much thought put into what the players wanted. We wanted to play teams that we had never played before. We wanted to play as much as possible. And so all of these issues that we're talking about now, I think, speak to sort of the core of the problem, which was that Ed never really had, this idea of growing the sport. For him, it was, a great Christmas bonus. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Because of all of these little details.
So when he proposed or mandated, whatever you want to call it, that we're going to remove the cash prize, his argument was because the teams get so focused on just winning money that he wants the focus to be on competition. And so he was able to justify that move by appealing to the competition of and the passion of the player. But going back to like what Kelly was saying, that's great and all, but the cost is not only the same, it's actually increasing and the quality is getting worse. And for me, at this point, I had already figured out how to make Tucson Dodgeball run on my own. I found out that insurance is like maybe $200 per year, and that venue costs weren't that much. And so for those that were starting to do the math, I think that also kind of added to why is there no cash prize, yet we're still paying these outrageous costs and the quality's terrible.
Well,
So,
Steve, the common pitch. I mean, you were quote unquote a pro, right?
quote unquote.
A pro, right? I was one of the pros.
Yep.
And I think Mark, you were part of that as well.
I was a pro for 2010, 2011, and I was told, well, I refused to sign the contract in 2012.
Yeah, I never signed the contract. I always mysteriously just disappeared around that time. I went to the bathroom or something.
For the record,
what's
I
that?
was never a pro, for the record.
Yeah, so I did that from 2006. So my first MDL was 2005. I did the pro thing in 2006, and I technically stayed a pro all the way, I think, until the very end. I think maybe 1 year before it ended, because I told him, look, I need to resign the pro thing because I want to play co-ed. But the way he would always justify it, Steve, was that he was losing money.
Yeah, constantly
And that's
saying.
very clear. And he would say that specifically at the pro day. He would say, look, I'm losing a lot of money in this. And so if I remember correctly, the justification for cutting the cash prize was because he was losing money. He was in the hole.
Oh, see, I never heard that. His go-to was, we're not making any money on this deal, or we're losing a lot of money on this deal. It was always this deal. Not to pick him apart for verbiage, but yeah, the beginning of every meeting was, we're not making any money, we're losing money. But then, yeah, it just, so however he justified it, the actions or the outcome or the final product was just not justifiable. And real quick, because I kind of want to go back to prize cash money, and I'm not sure if we covered this last time, but Kelly, for women's, what was your, we're talking about like how open and co-ed declined, but what was the women's division like? And I thought you guys won, and you didn't get a cash prize or payout. Do you remember that at all, or was that part of your experience?
I think by the time that women's had a set group that we had enough teams, basically, there was no longer a cash prize. The first couple years, so the very first year, there wasn't women's. The second, or they did like a women's, but it was like they just brought all the women together who wanted to play and like split us up onto different teams, basically. And then so they posted it for the next year, and only our team signed up. So basically what he said was, well, you can just play open, which, okay, we did that, but it was kind of something that happened consistently for the first couple years. And eventually they got enough women's teams, but by that point, there wasn't really a cash prize anymore.
Okay, so that wasn't like your end goal. It wasn't, oh, we want to win money playing dodgeball. It's like there's an actual women's division.
This is my thing with that. I heard both excuses for the prices going up. The competitiveness, and also that he's paying for pro day. All of this tells me, when he tells me that, oh, people are more competitive because of the cash prize, is he doesn't actually know athletes. Because we're going to be competitive no matter what. And we want to win. So whether or not there's a giant cash prize or a small cash prize, there are always going to be people out there that take it extremely seriously. And that was just one little foray for me to see, like, he just doesn't understand. He didn't understand what the athletes what the athletes thought, and how we were looking at the tournament much differently than he was.
And there's proof of that right now. I mean, Elite offers a cash prize, but that's not why people compete. It's to be amongst the best. It's because.
Fooled me.
What's that? Oh, well, I was maybe 80%. I could be wrong, but
I think when there's a cash prize available, people are going to expect, their amounts. But if you like, I see it all the time at like tournaments that there's no cash prize, but people take it really seriously.
Yeah.
It happens all the time, and people say stuff about it, but it's like, well, that just goes to show you that it's not about the money. It's those players are just competitive players, and they want to win.
Yeah, they want the glory.
Perfect example is Sin City.
Yeah.
There's no cash prize, but you know.
Yeah, you just haven't won it.
Competitive.
For cash prize?
Yeah, it's called reffing.
Oh, that's the best prize.
Yeah.
Well, the point is, and like, I think we're good on the money aspect. Just that I feel opened up a whole lot of shadiness because, again, money up, quality down, and we just got a crappy product that was just not worth the investment. And then also, as I was kind of saying earlier, the people that were actually running their own deals, their own leagues, organizations, opened up more scrutiny. Like, okay, this whole Tarkanian thing cannot cost this much money. I think people even ran the numbers too. And
I would do this injustice if I didn't tell the dodgeball community this one last piece about 2010. And I think and this is the reason why I think it was a pivotal point in the NDL and the dodgeball community itself. So the commissioner at the time in 2012 came up to Team Rise and said, "You guys have to split your team in half."
2010.
Or don't come to my tournament next year. And I think, and that's not what you hear from a player's commissioner. That's a business commissioner speaking. And I think that's why I think 2010 was really the pivotal point in the demise of NDL. I'm not saying that that's what originally caused it, but the word got out and people wanted to know why. And I think some of the teams that even won in 2010 felt cheated that they didn't get to play the best team at the time.
Oh, I can definitely vouch for that. Like, Rampage was built to play against Rise, to compete.
Because 2010, I remember there was janitors and
2010.
Yeah. I don't think there was Rise at that. People wearing Rise jerseys. Like, I remember.
We weren't allowed to wear the Rise jerseys in 2010.
Well, I remember the first time I remember seeing like little skinny Payan was wearing like the dark green Rise jersey.
You sure wasn't all God's people at that time?
That was green.
If we're talking about skinny Payan.
But if you remember correctly, in 2010, when we split Rise up, I had the great idea of making the alternate jerseys look like Rise jerseys. Serge, do you remember that? It was Rise of a New Regime, I think the name of the team was.
Yeah.
But we kept the same emblem, which was probably a big mistake by me because it was bad publicity for Rise. But either way, it still definitely looked like the Rise jersey. But it was just me, Payan, and I think a couple other randos that joined the team. And I think you, Tim, and Jim grabbed another team with some prison jerseys.
Yeah.
So, and that's the reason why I say I think that was really the Rubicon of NDL, because honestly, who says that when you're trying to make this the best of the best? Who tells a team you have to split or else don't come back?
Yeah, who tells the best team you're too good? You're scaring away everybody else. Like, that's, if you're positioning yourself as the premier world dodgeball competition and you're telling your best team, hey, you guys are too good.
Tell recreational teams and a recreational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was, I mean, I think the money one is probably a lot bigger, but, you know, when we got word that you guys weren't allowed to play for 2010, it sucked. I'm speaking for myself and Mason too, because we talked about it like, man, this win is awesome, but it feels kind of empty because we were expecting to play Rise and beat you guys for the championship. We didn't get that chance.
You beat a bunch of guys with no sleeves and had never played together.
Nah, the championship match was against Hawaii. You guys were just like, get out of the way. Just give us some medals now. Look at these raggedy, lost kids. What's that?
Who was it against?
Mixed plate crew.
That was Mixed Plate Crew.
No, I felt like that was the actual championship game, if you ask me. Plain hot sauce was just...
Oh.
So the idea, my conspiracy theory was that, okay, he wanted to break us up because there were people complaining about this team's always winning. and it was a threat to the business model. He wanted to have as many teams show up because that would be more entry fees, etc. When we came back, we swept it again, and then the year after, he changed his strategy. In my estimation, his thinking was, if you can't beat him, join him. And that was the year that we got this very bizarre Rise Award, where we were, asked to come up to the podium.
Was that 2010 or 2011 you got the Rise Award?
No, I think that's 2012.
Yeah.
2010 we were forced to split up. 2011 we come back, we win. 2012 his new approach is, if you can't beat him, join him, and or just use it to your advantage in some way. And so he did this Rise Award thing, and it was basically an award that he no, actually that was 2013.
Yeah.
The award was supposed to be presented to a team each year that showed the most amount of progress. And so he presented it to Davis, which was their first year, if I'm not mistaken, and they had shown up with like I don't know.
It was in their first year, yeah.
Yeah, it was like 16. So they had like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 hotel rooms full of people. And it was just it was pretty interesting that they were the team that he presented it to, because it really should have been awesome. Team Awesome had been doing really well and growing as a team by then, but
that was supposed to win you guys over. Like, hey, sorry for completely blocking you from playing in our tournament, but here's an award named after you 3 years after the fact.
Or maybe like using it as a selling point to everyone else.
God,
like,
you still held a grudge.
Yeah, I don't know. It was really strange.
It was weird.
Mark, real quick, without getting into a crazy rabbit hole, because this might open up a can of worms, but would you ever, as the elite commissioner, tell a team, hey, you're too good, don't come back next year?
Never heard me say that, and I'm all about teams getting more competitive.
Right.
I mean, we've seen super teams form. The only time we've had a problem with it is when you have players going from one region to another as like mercenaries just to like fill a spot kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that created a problem of like, I mean, if you just had like 6 all-stars like go and just travel each region and win everything, like we wouldn't have any regions. But no, like that's anti-competitive.
Yep. No, it's an easy one.
Yeah, and I think with NDL too, like Mark was saying, I get asked a lot about some of the old stories, and there's a lot of new players that weren't around to see kind of some of the actions that happened, and it's really hard to explain sometimes. Just the general feeling that I got around Ed too, on top of it. He was just so ready to go behind your back at any moment, I felt like, and just slimy, like a slimy businessman. And I remember there were multiple times where him and I had gotten into it because, I would tell him, like, this isn't working. This 20-minute rounds of, with 3 teams, when half the teams are arguing for 15 of those minutes, I'm not playing dodgeball. And he would get so angry at me and just, well, you know what? You shouldn't be upset about this. You can just come talk to me. And be like, well, I am coming to talk to you, and you're not listening. You're not going to do anything about it. You're not going to change anything. And that was the same year he went behind my back to the guys and was like, can you get her under control? I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. I remember that.
Stuff like that where you're just like, no, trust me. Like, they're not going to be the ones to get me under control. If anything, they're just as pissed off as I am.
Worse.
But he would just try to like bring people down and say the most ridiculous things to people. That for the women's teams, he would censor the names of the teams and like change things on it, and it was just dumb. Like, it was really bad. Just he's just not a good person, honestly.
So, real quick, Kelly, do you remember? Because I heard this from Jackie, who said she heard it from you and Payan, and the rest of the crew. But that was like, there was a time when 2007, 8 maybe, the NDL had the chance to appear on ESPN or ABC or a subsidiary of them to actually be televised. Mark is shaking her head. I think this is before your time, though. Does that ring a bell at all?
No, that might have been like the very first year. Serge, you know that?
Yeah. Are you talking about the Hanes commercial?
Oh God, no. That actually that happened to their credit.
More
Okay.
specifically, men's underwear.
Yes.
Then I don't know what you're talking about.
Dang. Okay. That might be lost in time. The story goes like there was an opportunity for the NDL to showcase a tournament on ABC or on ESPN or like an actual televised event. And because they wanted Ed to change the rules a little bit to make it more TV friendly, he utterly refused and bypassed this incredible opportunity. And that could all just be rumor or hearsay, but I wanted to know if that might have.
I strongly doubt that, just because Ed is an advertising teacher. Ed wouldn't pass an opportunity like that for something as little as the rules. This is not meant as a disparaging remark, but as much as Ed doesn't adapt, he's shown his willingness. Like, look at his willingness to work with the WDA flies in the fact of everything he had done before. Whether it was like, because there's no way he could sell his NDL branded 8.5 to the WDA. Or his specific set of rules or anything like that. The other reason is because back in that day, like even 2010, 2011, 2012, like no organization was going to put money into the structure of what the NDL was. The NDL was a for-profit corporation. Something like ESPN, anything like that, they look at that and they go, okay, if we do this and we pay this guy, what are we getting out of it? They're not getting anything out of it. They would just be paying someone's pockets. That's still the number one problem for sponsorships and dodgeball. And this is the reason why like Elite became went for a nonprofit, was always to be able to offer like, well, at least like you might not be getting millions of eyeballs, you're going to get a tax write-off.
Yeah, you'll get something at least.
Correct. And that was the thing even with Dodgeball Nation, was they already had their own money, but like at the end of the day, like corporations have no interest in just putting money in someone's pocket and getting nothing in return. So, I mean, I bet you, and this is speculation, like that the ABC, ESPN deal was just a way to try and sell what they were doing. And, hey, come to our tournament, for ESPN, ABC, not that was an actual thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, that, like I said, that was like 10 years ago, and I could just, we'll just strike that from the arguments here, and I don't know, maybe I can dig into it later, maybe I won't, but I do want to go back to some shady practices, because Serge, you've had one that you wanted to kind of talk about for a while now, and what's that?
I couldn't hear what you were saying.
Oh, it was, I was going to ask you about the whole stolen cash box incident.
Oh yeah, the shopping spree. Yeah, please.
Oh boy!
Hold on. Before you get to the shopping spree, we got to set this up because.
All right, whoever wants to take lead, go for it.
I was the only one there.
No, I was there.
The shopping spree?
Because remember, it was my teammate who was
Eric Ade, right?
accused. Yeah,
Of course.
So for example, that weekend, Dave had been a pro forever. And, like my goal of that weekend was like to win a championship. And, we got close. I mean, we got second and open, but nothing else was even remotely close. And, Dave was like, hey, like everybody, you, Randall, and Audet should go pro. And the thing about Audet, though, is that like because we walked into this tournament and we were like all of a sudden kind of hated, and it was, you know, it wasn't because of Dave or me or Randall, it was because of Ade. Like, he had a reputation that preceded him, and it was kind of something that was like bubbling through, because we all had to wear the like marathon runner numbers to be like considered pro as we were like getting selected. And it was always a thing where like Ade was doing and playing fantastically, because like my job had been catch it and Randall's job had been catch it, and we just feed Ade to throw, and Ade was just getting people out. And so he absolutely belonged in the pro division above a lot of people, and I'll say including myself, the way he was playing that tournament. And so, and he was doing everything he could. You know, he got in trouble like the first day because he was wearing jeans. And the second day they were making like complaints about his attire and his attitude. But like, you know, if you know Ade, like he was really holding everything back, like and internalizing everything. And then the end of day 2, when we were doing the tryouts and everything, that guy put like his heart and soul into trying out, and like it was easy to see like they were never giving him a chance. They were just letting him wear the bib, and they were never going to give him a chance to be pro, and they were just stringing him along. And there was so much anger I saw. And he flipped his and then at the end of like everybody picking, and like I was the second to last and Randall was the last, and then Ade stood there and they were like, hey, just so you know, you're not going to get picked. And he flipped out and he stormed out.
Hold on. Pause.
Yeah. Well, he gave a real good speech before he stormed
Thank you,
out.
Kelly. Exactly.
He gave it.
I mean,
He gave a heart talk to all of us, explaining that year after year he'd been behaving. Do you remember that, Kelly?
yeah, I was in the stands just watching, and I remember, he kind of went off talking about how, year after year he comes back, he still plays, he, tries his best to get better and all these things, and kind of just blew up at Ed and his
Was
wife.
he wrong?
No, and it wasn't.
No, not wrong at all.
It wasn't even a blow up, especially considering how composed he was and how mad he was. He just basically said the obvious. He's like, I've been coming here every single year. I'm just as good, if not better, than most of you, pointing to all of us pros. It's like watching, like, oh God, this is what's going to happen. And I mean, it was sad. I actually felt really terrible for him, and I was like, wow, this sucks, because like, yeah, he might have been Dodgeball's the NDL's most vocal critic. He would definitely light up dodgeballer.com, that forum, just airing out all of the NDL's dirty laundry and criticizing them. But he shaped up, and he tried his hardest to be out there, and he was excluded. And like you said, Mark, they just play with him. They just like, yeah, we'll let him go through the motions, let him feel like he's going to be picked, but then we're not going to pick him. And that's why he blew up the way he did. And yeah, I remember that almost clear as day. I was like, man, this sucks. This poor kid.
That second day, like, it was a big deal that he showed up in basketball shoes and basketball shorts.
Yep.
Like, some of the people in LA had never seen anything like that, because he always played in cowboy boots.
So was that the same year that he was accused of stealing the money box?
Yes.
So,
You guys go in there. Okay.
That's the precursor to all this.
Got to build it up.
I have the conclusion to this story.
All right, give Sergio the conclusion.
And he storms out, and not 5 minutes later, Lisa Prentice comes running in crying, talking about the cash box has been stolen. There you go. You're queued up.
Okay. And so this is at the pro day, right?
Yeah.
We're sitting there on a Sunday.
On a Sunday.
We're all on the bleachers. Kelly, you're there, right?
Yep.
And Lisa is crying, and so she storms off, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Colin Gavernsky who comes back in, and he calls on all of the pros to donate money to try to reimburse, to make up for the money that had been stolen. And so they all start going, you know, walking up to Colin and putting money in a hat. I remember grabbing Justin Pine's hand and saying, "You're not going to put money, are you?"
I did.
You did?
I put money in.
Yeah,
I put
me too.
40 in.
Shame on you.
I didn't give him a 40, but I gave him.
Nope.
I grabbed Pine's hand and I said, "You're not doing." And Pine looked at me. He's like, "No, I'm just making it look like that." And I said, "Okay." And I just sat there on the bleachers because I had seen it before so many times. And so that was it, you know. Colin, and I think maybe, I'm not quite sure. I don't want to say Rob because
it was Tommy.
Was it? Oh, it was Tommy Viviano. You're right. It was Tommy. And so Ed comes back in a few minutes later, and he gives this sort of heartfelt speech saying, "Look, I really appreciate the support, guys. You know, we lost a lot of money from the drop box being stolen. This was of course the money that he had been charging spectators to come watch and selling merchandise." And so, you know, he gives this big speech, and the pros, you know, all contributed, and that was the end of that day. Well, so what happened later was that Karina and I, every time we would go to NDL, we would either stay a week later or go a week before. We would take it as a way to vacation in Vegas.
I'm sorry, Sergio. I know, Serge. Sorry. I just want to pause real quick, just because you left out, I feel, a very key detail.
Okay.
All this money was collected in a pizza box, and whether it was Rob, Tommy, or Chase, or whoever it was to present the money to Ed, he started crying. He held his heart and then teared up and just said, "Dodgeball's family, blah blah blah. Thank you so much." Really sold that aspect. So that was a key detail I felt like didn't even be let out, so sorry.
It was a key detail, and he repeated the same thing that he had been repeating for so many years, was that he does this, and he invests money, and he's losing money.
Same story.
And to be fair, that was a touching moment.
It was a touching.
Oh, it was for you?
For me. I was like, dang, look at us go. We are a bunch of great people.
I saw it as earnest.
Earnest is good.
You know, Mark, that was your first year.
No, absolutely.
Right.
That was your first year. I had been around since 2005 and had seen the song and dance many times.
I hadn't fully been
I certainly had not.
Right.
Well, the funny thing is, the whole time I'm sitting there, because I met Ade before that tournament, and I had kind of known him from playing in different tournaments and stuff. And I'd asked the people around me, I'm like, "Do you think he would actually do that? Because I don't think he would." Everybody said no. And so I'm watching all of this go down, and in my head, I'm just thinking, I didn't ever really buy it.
And mind you, this is okay. So this is like a big breakdown over you know, a drop box that had money collected from selling merchandise and charging people at the door.
Yep.
And not taken into or you know, he is taken into account, but I mean, charging $400-$300 for entry fee, you know, for, you know, 40 plus teams. So I mean, making a lot of money. But he's, you know, they do this big show. You know, the drop box is stolen, losing money, crying, etc. And so that was the end of that day. A few days later, Karina and I were staying at the Stratosphere, and they have like these little shopping strip malls. And we walk into one of these.
Hold on, Serge, before you keep going.
Am I cutting off somebody of the?
No, you're good.
I just want to set the stage. So this is after NDL is already over, right? Because this is a few days after the tournament.
Yes.
That you and Karina. Okay, so they stayed additional after NDL as well. Okay.
So this was probably on a Tuesday. The way the NDL would work is that you would fly in. The amateur tournament was on Friday and Saturday, yes?
Yeah.
And then the pro day was always on Sunday, right? And we should probably go back and talk about the structure of the pro institution, et cetera. But that's, you know, okay, we'll touch on that in a second. So after the pro day and the breakdown of the entire, you know, gym, the event was over. So 2 days later, Karina and I are walking down the strip mall of the Stratosphere, and we walk into this high end, I don't remember the name of the brand, but it was like that UFC sort of style that was really popular back in the day.
Affliction or some, yeah.
Affliction.
Ed Hardy.
Was that what? No, I think it was either one of those
Some
two.
garbage
Those two
brand,
sound
regardless.
It was totally probably Affliction.
So we walk in and we see Ed next to the changing room with Lisa watching, and he has from head to toe a completely new outfit. A blazer. Who wears a blazer? A blazer. He had a blazer with Mark. Okay, Mark, you do. Super like new nice jeans, a nice blazer, a new shirt, the whole thing from head to toe. And we see him, and I grabbed Karina and I try to turn around before they see us to avoid that awkward moment, but we end up making eye contact. So we had this super awkward exchange inside the store. Me knowing that, Ed just had given this, gigantic, this big speech about losing money and then collecting money from the pros. And then being there and seeing him, trying on this new outfit in the super expensive store. It was the most awkward experience. And that is just, it was another example of how this thing is just a super shady organization. So that was the end of the story for me.
Yeah. Dang it! Who is that? Mute that phone.
I don't have my
Mark.
Mark, are you sending messages?
It's going to my computer.
That's all good. Yeah, that is pretty dang shady. If I ran an organization, lost all my money, last thing on my mind would be staying after the fact and also buying a new blazer.
Well, but was this the same year that he told us that like his business went out of business too?
Probably.
Yeah, his law firm shut down as well.
That might have been the next year.
Can't remember. Yeah.
I think he moved to Texas around that time frame, 2009, 10. His Brain Co was doing things that required him to be elsewhere, but yeah, So Eric Ade, he didn't steal the money. We don't know. Can't confirm. Can't deny.
Eric has an interesting background. If you were to Google him, I'm no desire to get into it, but like the one thing I'll say about him in my interactions outside of dodgeball is he's always been a pretty stand-up guy. Like
he's an actor, right?
He's an actor and he's a poker pro.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Really, what he does is he does stunt work.
Yeah, stunt work.
But like, he's like, I've never seen him be the guy to, like, who would just like smash it, like, and just grab the cash box. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but like, if my gut feeling would be like, no.
Yeah.
Even so, though, like, let's just assume he did do it. I mean, the whole fact that Serge saw Ed, he did.
Then why didn't they call the police?
There's a whole lot of ifs. But
Because if you're
the
missing
story.
that much money and you know who did it, and there was cameras in the gym, like, call the police, man.
Yeah.
Pretty cut and dry. You say, hey, this guy stole it. He's staying at this hotel. Pretty easy to find a cash box on someone if they're searched.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's unfortunate for everything that happened.
But even if he did steal it, I mean, that's pennies on how much this guy was making, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some people have done the numbers. What was he pulling in? 70 to 100K per tournament?
It would have been close to 100K based on. If you want to get into it, that gym cost him $4,200 for that weekend because he was only renting half. His insurance probably at that time was, if he had insurance, well, he must have had insurance, was probably at most $1,500.
How about materials?
Throw on
recycled, no less.
2x4s and buckets. You're looking at, throw another $200 on there.
How about the cost of labor?
hold on.
Free.
Netting, we're looking at like maybe $500-600. We'll be generous and say $1,000. On top of that, like balls, let's throw in another like $2,000 for shits and giggles. We're still talking under $10,000
for what he pulled in. And it's not like you have any grounds to actually have accurate math, right, Mark? It's not like you ever rented Tarkanian yourself.
I've rented the Tarkanian twice. I've held longer, bigger tournaments that took up more time and more space. I've dealt with them personally. I've paid them twice. And, you know, I don't think anybody buys more dodgeballs than me or Jake.
Did you adjust for inflation? I mean, this was 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, to give you an idea, we had the very first Elite Dodgeball Championships in Vegas. That was
2014.
Yeah, it was 2014. And I'm trying to think, the entire cost of the event was $6,800. Was all in. Balls, rentals, nets, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, so for anybody questioning, you know, the validity of those numbers, the accuracy, you can't get it any more straight from you, Mark. You've been there.
No one's held more tournaments in America than I have, and it's not even close.
There you go, just adding on. So,
well, I'm past triple digits.
Yeah.
What part of America?
Everywhere.
What?
Sorry, Mark. I'm just joking with you.
Oh no. And then
South America, Central America.
Has anybody held more tournaments than me in South America? No.
The Canadians? No, not
you think, but a singular organization or all the individual organizations?
I have no idea. I'm just
exactly.
Oh boy. Anyway, so let's see. We're kind of 2010. 2011, similar story. Less teams, same cash increase in cost. Same idea with the whole pool nonsense.
Something important that we're glossing over was, and this is just because in 2010, when we went to pro, we were advised that like in order to play pro, you had to sign the contract, and the contract was an 8-page contract that was. Judging by the looks of it, it was an NFL contract that had like whited out any inferences of NFL and put in NDL. But the problem with the contract, I remember, like, because even at that time, Costanza was calling all the LA players saying, "Don't sign. Whatever you do, don't sign." Because what you were doing is you were signing over your likeness, signing over like much more than just a photo release, like. You were signing your rights. They could market you however they please, but you also belonged to them as an organization. So as a player, you belonged to them. And so, for example, like there were stipulations in the contract that you couldn't go to any non-NDL tournament without expressed permission from the NDL. If you went to an outside tournament, you were not allowed to play with more than one other NDL pro on the team because they were worried about, like, if you had lost, people could say, "Oh, we beat pro dodgeballers." There was also a stipulation in the contract that said if you won money at other tournaments, the NDL was entitled to it.
Oh, I remember that.
There was a couple other things. I signed it the first year because I was dying to go pro, and then the second year I reluctantly signed it. My third year, I'd switched jobs and I was working for a person who required me being on camera sometimes. So like those rights of like on camera, anything like that, I didn't have the right to like sign those away to another organization. And And I had said to Ed, like, I can't sign this contract because, like, I can't give you what you're asking on this contract. You know, their ability to, like, sell a commercial or thing to Haynes, like, that couldn't be done. The pro contract was a weird one where it was a 1 year you belong to the NDL, and then later on they started doing it 2 years. But the thing that always bothered me the most is how they used it as a threat. Anybody that later on wanted to play elite, they would threaten them with the contract of, well, you signed this contract and we're not giving you permission to go play elite. So they would hold it over people's heads. When you got 18-year-olds thinking an organization is going to sue you, what do you think they did?
Fell in line.
That happened to Team Awesome, right?
Yes, on several occasions.
Amongst so many others.
What was what was going on in between Vegas or DWCs here? Like, did San Diego, you guys had Vavi, is that correct?
Sandy, yeah, well, yeah, no, Bobby was just like a small little social.
Yeah.
So like, did Ed ever try to prevent you guys from engaging in that or doing your own thing, or?
No,
Well-
because we had two of his favorite players playing in it too. So he didn't really say much. As long as those two players were on board, we were fine.
Colin and Tommy.
Well, that was the interesting thing, was that, like, at the time of that early years of the contract, there wasn't any other kind of organization that was, like, worthy of them really caring about and exercising that.
Right.
Because they weren't going to step on the toes of, like, your little local league. But if there was like another big organization coming up, or something that really standed to compete, not as like a league, but as like a tournament, that's when it became a fault. And I think
Isn't that when he started acting on it? Was when the elite came into the picture and players like, Team Awesome players decided to go there. And
well, I mean, we could get into, like, so elite started December
2012. 11.
Right?
2011.
2011.
So we can skip to 2011. Post 2011. That's when Syndicate formed, and so Syndicate was told, because we had so many of us were like me, Ish, Vince, and Dave were pro, we had to split into two teams. We split into the two teams. I mean, if you remember, we used the other side of the gym. So we used the front of the gym instead of the back of the gym that year. Everything felt a little bit more discombobulated in that, like, okay, so now we were a pro. Now we had to show up Tuesday, or was it Thursday night for the pro meeting? Were any of you in the pro meeting?
sometimes I would show up.
Yeah, so the 2011 pro meeting,
I don't think you ever showed up, Serge. You were at dinner at the house.
well,
Yeah,
so the
Serge
2011
never
pro
missed
meeting-
dinner at the house.
Yeah, Serge was at dinner.
Nice.
The
I was sick a lot.
2011 Pro meeting on the Thursday was kind of where Elite started, because it was like, okay, so now I was a pro, I was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, I was excited to help out and be a part of the organization. Like my Chicago team, we won the pro division in 2010, and we get in there and he's talking about, like, bright, awesome new things coming. We really need you guys to step up. We need to grow. We need to expand. Like, we really need, like, all hands on deck. It can't just be me. It can't be just, the guys on the forum here. And so, like, kind of everybody's just kind of looking at each other. And I stood up and I was like, I would be more than happy to help you grow the NDL in Los Angeles and really be the point guy for that. Like, I have the ability and I can do this. And it was more kind of like, yeah, okay, sit down. And I was like, oh.
I think I wasn't expecting anybody to actually answer this call.
What?
He's like, I wasn't expecting anybody to actually like answer this call for help.
And it was just it was such a like, oh, okay. And then I had just been so turned off by like just the brush. And then we played the tournament. We had some problems with like rules here and there, like how syndicate we faced. We won some, we lost some. Just so you remember, Serge, that's the year we beat you in foam.
Must have not been on that team.
That's probably what happened.
No, you were.
In case you need to refix your post about all the championships you won.
Yes.
But I just remember getting to pros, and then like pros was so exciting the year before, and then they had decided to change the format, change everything about it, and it just was off. And I was just like, okay, like I think the open division was more fun and more competitive just because that's what people played as all year long. And then all of a sudden we were thrown on teams where you didn't know those players, and it wasn't quite as good.
In some random city, right? Like,
yeah.
All of a sudden you're playing for like Chicago.
Yeah, I played for Chicago, and it was like, okay. And then like you had some people, I remember some of the Texas people playing on, what was it, the Arizona Resistance, and some people were on Memphis or whatever. It made no sense. But it was that year where I decided, like, almost because it was 3 months later. It was December 10th, 2011, where I remember talking to people after the event, and I was like I remember calling up Bill Fair, and I was like, hey, do you think you could get Rampage to a tournament in December? And did I call you, Serge, or was it Tim?
It must have been Tim. I think it was Tim.
Yeah, and I was like, here's what I want to do. I want to do like a poker game amongst friends where, like, let's just throw some money in. Let's cover the cost of the gym.
Oh, no, you called me. The first Elite Invitational.
Yeah. So the very first Elite Eight.
Yeah.
It was that we're like, it was like, hey, and I called a bunch of teams, and it was like Dream Catchers and Legion and Syndicate and Rampage and Headhunters and
Gridlock,
and it was just kind of.
This was in that brick gym.
What?
Yeah.
That brick gym.
Yeah.
Right?
It wasn't a brick gym, no.
Yeah.
It was in brick and mortar.
I do remember bricks from the video.
You're thinking a year and a half later in Stoner Rec Center. This is the one that was like over by Dodger Stadium. It was the one where if you go back and you go to the YouTube channel, what I did is I called in a ton of favors in the industry. Like, so we had 2 courts, 8 teams, and I had 6 cameramen.
Allison Knight, I remember that.
Allison Knight was just doing photos.
Right.
So like we recorded like a ton of angles, and we played that, and it was kind of like what, 6 hours. So it was a single division. It was super fun, and that's what it came off of, just being like, when he told me and kind of brushed me off, it was a moment of like wanting to just like prove to myself that we could do it, or that it could be done. And once it was done, it was like, oh, I want to do a couple of these a year, because once a year for the NDL is not enough.
Right. So what was this is 2000, this is the end of 2011, still kind of, yeah, still kind of looking at the DWC as the premier championship event. Was there any other, I don't want to say like,
well, that year they had, I remember they had 35 teams at the NDL in 2011.
Right, and that's why initially I wanted to say like 2010 was a decline, because that's when I noticed it was starting to fall, because it felt like half the teams that showed up in 2010 showed up in 11.
Yeah, 2010 was like twice the amount of people, easy.
So did you did you get his attention when you held the Elite Eight in December? Did he start paying attention to you then?
No, I don't think I received any attention from him, but I did get the attention of Dan Vladescu from Dodgeball Nation.
That's the name I was wondering if we were gonna get to that. So Dodgeball Nation, I'll let you continue.
Sorry, what?
I was gonna say just go ahead and continue because Dan Vladescu and Dodgeball Nation and was like the
was
10K.
there anything like that you wanted to add? Well, because like 2011 was also a big year because that was the year he turned me off of it. But also 2011 we had the NLA, was it the Super Dodgeball or
Super Dodgeball?
Whatever the NLA one was, which was somewhere like it was definitely before they had their own venue.
Yeah, it was 2011.
Yeah.
Looking
And
at my records.
those tournaments were like it was the first instance of Doom that showed.
$1,000 cash prize.
But like the thing that was crazy was it was like 9 a.m. to past midnight. And there was just so much standing around, so much sitting because they would use 2 courts. Meanwhile, they had like a bunch of teams, and it was just like it was between NDL and seeing that and just being like, okay, so they had a DJ, they had a guy grilling burgers outside, and I just remember standing around being like, good Lord, why don't we use this court and this court and this court and play more games at the same time?
And this was NLA?
Yeah, this was NLA.
Next Level Athletics. Are they still around? Are they still doing dodgeball stuff?
It doesn't exist in dodgeball other than maybe doing like a drunk tournament once a year.
Right.
They still done their like Dodgetoberfest one.
Yeah, that's what it Dodgetoberfest.
And the organization itself is still around.
Yeah, I just don't think they don't really cater to dodgeball anymore. They're more they've become part of WACA.
Okay.
So they really like they're actually like one of the premier areas for kickball.
So just to kind of give my perspective, I was in Afghanistan during this time. So when I came back in the spring of 2012, it felt like that's when, because there had always been like other organizations trying to kick off their own like dodgeball events outside the NDL, and it felt to me that Ed was always able to kind of shut them down. But in 2012, it seemed like that's when they started to step up and were starting to produce a better product. So like there was NLA, and then there was the Phoenix Dodgeball 10K that was hosted, here in Phoenix. But it just seemed like, and then that's when Dodgeball Nation started to come into play, and then I think Bill was starting to work on the international scene. So it just felt like 2012 was when the NDL was down and everything else was going up. But at least that was my perception. It was just like, where'd all these organizations come from? Have they always been there? And is this going to last? Like, is the NDL going to be able to shut this down? And how is this going to compete with the DWC? And for me, it was just exciting and refreshing to see other entities out there where we can go play and be shown a better product of dodgeball. Not sure if that was the experience that you guys noticed or partook in.
Yeah, no, I think 2012 was a really pivotal year just because, there was NLA, there was, Elite held its second tournament at NLA's venue, and that way, at that time we had, was it 13 or 15 teams? Because that's the one where Adrenaline Rush came out, and we held we did a Tron dodgeball later that night as kind of an after party.
What tournament was that? Was that
that was the second one. The second one was at NLA's venue where they had the big turf fields. And
it was a mixture of the NLA Elite.
That was the one that you got injured and Kelly filled in for you.
And won.
Yeah.
Yep.
This was 2012?
Sound like an even trade.
I say
Hey, yes, absolutely.
Am I still the only female?
You might be the only female that's won an open division.
There you go.
For
Even in the
elite or
North?
just of all time?
I don't think Kat or Paige have ever won.
Or Steph, because Steph plays a lot of open.
Yeah.
Best we could ever do with Steph was third place.
Yeah, I don't think Steph's won either.
So this was...
But that was 2012. That's 2012. 2013.
That was May of 2012, and then so then the next tournament I had held was the Dodgeball Nation 10,000 that December. But like, yeah, 2012 was a big year because that was the last year I showed up to the NDL and I told them, like, I can't sign the contract. Like, we had gotten screwed by the refs. I think I played like 6 games that weekend. And it was just like, all right, there's just been so many things where like we couldn't play with a team and it was like the NDL had stopped being fun.
Was this the case for the rest of you guys? Kelly, Serge, Joseph, 2012 was like when did the NDL like lose its magic for you? Like that, I feel like that's a silly question, but
I mean, I personally think the NDL stopped being fun after like the first couple of years I played. Still went.
yeah.
I just wanted to be able to play competitively, but I think the veil was lifted after those first couple of years, and you kind of saw it for what it was.
That's a good way to put it. And yeah, I think the word I was looking for, Mark, was pivotal. 2012 for me seemed pivotal. Like all these other entities are coming into play now, and they're just showing a better way. But
I think. Sorry, Steve.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that for us, I mean, for me, 2005 through 2008, it was great. You know, it was the best thing that I was doing at the time. It was just amazing. I looked forward to the tournament every year. And then 2008 was when we first started noticing, okay, well, you know, there are some problems and that's that. Like we had no answers for them.
Right.
And that continued through 2011. 2011 was when Mark held the first Elite 8, and I think that's when he was toying around with the idea of, okay, well, there could be an organization that can do this better. 2012, it continued. 2013 was when you had your first West Coast series, right, Mark, if I'm not mistaken? 2013.
Yeah, 2013 we had the 4-round series.
In the West, only in the West.
Only in the West. And that's the one you're thinking about, the brick tournament, was round 1 was in Santa Monica and Stoner Gym.
So that's, for me, that's when it was solidified. Like, okay, there's a replacement. You know, I kept going to the NDL and kept having fun, continued having fun through, I would say, 2013. But I knew that there were a lot of problems. But it wasn't until 2013 that I thought, okay, well, there could be a replacement. 2014 First Nationals. At that point, we were done with the NDL. And I think that was the year that they had like 12 teams of like 3 people, if I'm not mistaken.
God,
Which
that was
one?
awful.
2014, the first year of Elite Nationals.
So the 2013 is really the last year, because
Of NDL.
Yeah, is the last true year of the NDL, because that's when they had about like 10, 12 teams, because 2013 is when you went and swept everything.
Yeah, no, there were more than 10, 12 teams. There were more in 2013.
And this is what, like, a lot of people attribute me to bringing down the NDL. But very important to note, 2013 was the start of UDC.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same weekend. It was the same weekend, and what happened was you had teams like Team Awesome, and you had Doom, and you had all those teams didn't go to the NDL because they qualified for UDC. And when they were given the chance to compete for $50,000 or compete at the NDL, what do you think they chose that weekend?
I mean, if they were smart, they chose the option where you could draw a seed out of a hat and play single elimination.
And so they were desperately trying to get, like, they had arranged a shuttle to take you from UDC to, like, you know, the Tarkanian. They had, you know, Ed was hanging out while Brett ran everything over at the Tarkanian. And it was
that wasn't the first year of UDC though.
Was it 2012 was the first year, right?
Because the first year it was in LA.
Yeah, the first year was in LA 2012, but that was a tournament that was like later in October. But the second year of UDC was at the same weekend of NDL. So all of a sudden, all of NDL's customers were now over at the trampoline tournament in the same city, and no one was showing up to the NDL, and they were doing everything they could to get everybody to there.
But there was some level of coordination, because I remember that the trampoline tournament was at night, in the evening, and the NDL tournament was during the day. Is that not right?
No.
No?
You're thinking that, like, maybe there was definitely overlap.
Uh-huh.
But, like, even in 2014, it was the same weekend again, and then that's when you had, like, the 6 teams.
Okay.
So didn't Ed try to position?
No, because I'm pretty sure in 2013 it didn't overlap because Ed was actually
Part of it.
all of the stuff for it.
He was part of it while Brett was running it.
But I think it was 2014
because I was a part of Riot that year, and we were at UDC, and it was just like the most awkward thing in the world because, you know, like, Ed was walking around, like, talking to people, telling them, like, oh, that Mark Acomb, like, sorry, Mr. Podcast Editor guy.
Oh, now you're apologizing.
But he was talking so much, and it's like, you don't think these people here are gonna not tell me that? Like, because at that point, I've been doing Elite for 2 years. We've been, you know, giving the money back. We've been doing great things. And nobody liked Ed, so they were just coming and running and telling me all the stuff he was saying. But, like, I was there to play UDC. It was just, it's so funny. He kept choosing the same weekend as UDC. And mind you, like, UDC was going to do it whenever they well wanted to.
Yeah, they had the position.
Ed could have moved his date and saved his organization.
I don't think
there
that would
was
have saved
nothing
him.
special about that first weekend of August, right?
No, it was still going back to, like, the typical NDL mentality was it's our way or no way, and we're gonna divisively schedule our events to mirror yours, and we're gonna make people pick us or you. We're going to throw the whole, hey, you can't play in this event if you're a pro, and we're just going to be as divisive as possible. And for me, speaking for him, like, he gambled against UDC and lost, and then he tried to...
So, I'm confused, Steve. Wasn't there some level of collaboration between those two organizations?
So the level of collaboration was Ed was the announcer. Now, if you remember years earlier, there was a trampoline division for NDL that was done on Thursday night.
Uh-huh.
But when the UDC came, because they were using NDL balls, they were using all kinds of random. But when UDC became a thing, they hired Ed to be the commentator. And this is the part that blows my mind, is that, like, when they hire Ed to be a commentator, like, there's got to be a moment where he goes, oh, this is the same weekend. Like, I should move mine, or convince them, hey, you do know that there is a national dodgeball tournament that weekend. Like, you're not going to get a lot of people. He could have played that card. That was always bananas to me that, like, it was like he knew train A was leaving the station and train B was leaving the station, and he knew they were on the same track.
trying to Google because I want to put up on his website. 2013, he did make it. What's that?
That was 2013, by the way, what Mark was talking about. That trampoline division that Elite had.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking we're a year off.
NDL had that.
Yeah.
Because we win as Rise of Doom.
That's ironic.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure the first 2 years of UDC, because it was always around my birthday, it was middle September.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was until after the first few years of UDC.
Then it would have been 2014. Because 2014 I was on Riot, and that was the year we made it to the tournament.
Yeah.
The year before we didn't get enough votes.
I'm trying to pull up the 2013 recap because it's either 2013 or 2014. They did try to position it where it was like a partnership between the UDC, and it really wasn't. It was like come to Vegas for the DWC, but also go play trampoline as well. It was like really weak.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was 2014.
Yeah.
Okay. And then 2014, they tried.
Was definitely the year where Ed was at the venue. Meanwhile, Brett was running things, and they would switch. Yeah.
When did Benedetto start commentating? 2014, right?
That was when Barclay Poole left. So yeah, it would have been 2015.
2015.
Yeah, I think him and Brett started 2015.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they tried the same thing. 2014, World Dodgeball National World. I can't talk. NDL DWC 2014 was the best ever. No photos though, and it was. They tried to pass it off as if this great event happened, and I think we all knew. 2013, those of us that went, that the NDL was just done. Like there's no salvaging this dumpster fire. It's over, and going to the rest of 2013, because the first Western Regional tournament you had, Mark, was in April for Elite, and that was when Evil came down. That's when Doom was there. I'm pretty sure Rise was there, but that's when Glenn Spacer came with Adrenaline Rush. Do you remember when the second and third tournaments were? The third one was in Phoenix, and that was in October. Thank you, Facebook Flashback Time Hop. But do you
that
remember
might have been what? Probably like Inspire Courts.
The second one?
I want to say that was the fourth round, no?
Oh, you know what? The second one, there was one in July. It was my 30th birthday.
Wasn't there two in LA, one in Phoenix?
Was there a fourth one? I thought the one in Phoenix was the end because that's when you gave.
I don't think we had four.
Yeah.
No, the very first series was four for sure.
I know we did one in Tucson one time, but I think that was later.
That was 2014.
Yeah, Tucson. Oh, that was the year after.
No, there was because you only did. Did you do other regions, or was it just West for 2013?
It was just West with the series, but we had done an East tournament, we had done a North tournament.
Okay. So the first one's in April. There was one in July for sure.
Yeah, there would have been easily something like August and September or September, October. Might have been September, October, come to think of it.
Well, October was in Phoenix, and that one went to like 9 p.m., but I remember going to Bogies, and I think maybe you announced rings at that point, or you'd given them to Rise. That was, I thought I remembered 4 as well.
Probably.
But that's when I noticed, like, okay, there's a lot of hope for Elite to actually happen. They might pick up where the NDL left off, yeah.
If you go to the Elite website and you go to the Wall of Champions, it's all there.
I mean, I'm surprised Sergio doesn't just know.
I
keep calling you Sergio. Serge, sorry, man.
No, I know. It's right here in my own little folder.
Which I thought the first year was 2014, but I could be mistaken for rings.
Of what, Elite?
No, for rings.
The first year for rings was the series in 2013. We won that one.
There was a series in 2013 that was like 4 rounds, and then 2014
was the first nationals.
Was throw down the year series in all 4 regions and nationals.
Nationals, yes.
Okay. So I'm trying to get back on the timeline. 2012 in essence was pivotal. 2013 NDL was done. Elite started to rise. I think you closed out Elite with the California something.
Steve, you said NDL was done 2013?
I think so. Like, I think they attempted a 2014, but they were...
It wasn't the 13-team tournament in 2013, but it was obvious that it was on its way down.
I mean, I don't know how you can get any lower than that.
Now that you say it, the 13 or the 7 or 8 team tournament was 2014.
Yes.
The 9-person one was 2015.
No, that's actually wrong.
It's 2013 was the 10 to 12 teams drawing seeds out of a freaking hat. And 2014 was I don't even think it happened. There might have been 9 people there.
No, that's not right, because 2014, I'm sorry, yes, you're right.
Say it again. Hold on, Serge, say it again one more time.
2014 was the Elite it had the same dates as NDL did, but it was in Vegas and we took the venue, no?
Yeah.
Oh, well, they had we didn't have the same dates. They still had the beginning of August and we had the end of August. But 2015 was the last official one because those players then made up the team that went to Manchester for the whatever that organization is.
The World Cup?
Yeah, whatever.
No, 2014 because they do it every 4 years. I'm right on this.
So
y'all can Google this later if you want. Go ahead, Serge.
I don't know if this is what you wanted, Mark, or not, but I remember in 2013, which was the last real tournament at the NDL.
Yeah,
you already had the idea of hosting a national tournament in 2014.
Correct.
By then, we had already done the regionals in all 4. I think in all 4. No, 4
just
no, just in the West. Just in the West.
2013, I had done a West Coast series.
Yes.
I had done, I think, a tournament in the North, a tournament in the East.
And the California State Pinch or whatever.
Yeah. And so the series in 2013 helped me figure out...
Was just the West.
With just the West. Helped me figure out 4 was too many. 3 was the right number. And if we do this series in the North and the East... and we'll just shoot in the dark for the South, we can do it. But we started everything by hosting Throwdown at the beginning of the year because we are going to do these series in their respective regions with the thought of nationals will bring everybody together, but we need to give people a taste of it. And that's what Throwdown was. Yep. Was trying to get North people to drive 8 hours and get East people to drive 8 hours and meet in between in Rochester. And a lot of West teams came out for it.
So Steve, when we went to the NDL in 2013, that idea was already very well articulated. Mark's idea. And we went to that tournament lobbying for the Elite, knowing that there was going to be a national tournament the following year.
Yeah, because you guys had talked to Davis that year.
We talked, and to Awesome. So I'll take credit for both.
Well done.
Awesome in 2013, they were supposed to come to the very first Elite in the East Coast.
Okay.
And a shoe-in to win it, to be honest. And they backed out the night before because
of the threat.
Well, not only the threat of the contract, but they were told, we'll pay you not to go.
Right.
To get that confirmed, you'd have to talk to Team Awesome.
So, Steve, we already had the idea, my team at least, had the idea of, look, this is the last year for the NDL. We are actively lobbying for something else.
Going to move on.
That is in the making. It has already been done in the West Coast, and there are these plans for something that's national in the scope and has the potential to replace what is right now with the NDL. So we were actively lobbying for this replacement at the 2013 NDL, and 2 specific teams that we talked to was Team Awesome and Davis.
Awesome.
And so I guess from our point of view, the final sort of nail in the coffin for the NDL was 2013. we knew we weren't coming back, and we knew that there was something better in the works.
Yeah. Kelly, you raised your hand like 10 minutes ago. Do you remember what you were going to say by chance?
Well, I raised it when we were still talking about 2011.
Oh, I was talking to Kelly, Joe.
No worries.
Sorry.
We were talking about, what was your last year, your favorite year? I mean, obviously my favorite year was my first year, but really 2011 was the year that I felt NDL was my best year because I thought it was revenge year, in the fact that Rise was coming back from the sit down from 2010, which we were forced to do. But really, it was just to say, to be most blunt, you, Ed Apprentice. That's what it was. In 2011, all I wanted to do for 2 years was destroy every team that we played. And that was my mentality. And I'm going to be most honest. I don't really get to say that very often, or I hope a lot of people hear that. To be honest, 2011 was the year that I think Rise really wanted just to destroy every team that was in front of them. Serge, I don't know. I mean, if you felt the same way, but
yeah, big smile on your face, Serge.
And I felt that was the destruction of 2011 was the destruction of NDL, which was also the same year that Mark came up to, I think, probably almost every player individually and pitched the elite idea. And I was like, Mark, if you put this together, I'll be there.
I never pitched it at 2011.
Well, maybe it was 2012 then. Not really sure. You pitched the idea of, hey, if we get this together, would you show up?
I don't know if that timeline doesn't work because 2011, it was after being snubbed that I did the first one, and I had done a second one. I mean, perhaps at 2012, I had talked to some teams to like coming out or like me doing something like 2012. Yeah, I mean that makes more sense.
Yeah, I just remember you pitching the idea of elite,
but I never pitched it at NDL.
No. You pitched it, but you pitched it to us as a team, individually, and at that point we're like, yeah, we're totally in.
Because I was always of the mind of like, India will always have this thing here every year. Like, I want to do something for the other 363 days of the year.
Nice.
Yeah, but I just remember 2011 being the year that was the turning point for me, and that was actually my last year at NDL. It was 2011.
For sure. Yeah. Kelly? You had your hand raised as well. Do you remember what you were going to say?
I don't remember.
Do you?
But for me, like, from a female's perspective, at this point, even with all this talk of elite, like the beginning parts of it were still very much just open. And so there were still only 3 major tournaments where women could play in. And that was NDL and the winter and summer Grand Canyon State Games. And those were kind of like our 3 big tournaments. And then as Elite grew and we got co-ed, that was a big turning point. I think that helped to get more and more women involved into that as well. But I think, looking back at NDL, that was one thing we did appreciate, even though it wasn't necessarily his priority, was that we had another tournament that had a women's division.
Was that something that just kind of happened on his own initiative, or if I'm not?
He always had it posted every year, but he just never.
You guys really
recruited.
I thought that was fought for, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, he just never recruited, so it would be like I said, the very first time we brought a team together, it was me, Jackie, Jen, a couple other people, and we ended up having to play open because no other teams signed up. So we
Right.
signed up for the women's division, but there weren't any other teams.
And I remember like going back to the Dodgeball's an Oregon team, Portland, I think. 2006, he had blasted them on his homepage saying, you know, they're coming to this women's division, all women's team. So I think the announcement was there, but I don't want to say the effort was there. Because I remember that. I remember you guys would show up, hey, sorry, no women's division this time, go play in men's, or here's some gym space in the corner, battle it out and whatever. And it wasn't
it wasn't like we basically had to start doing it on our own.
Right.
And I would say Grand Canyon State Games was one of the big things that helped with that, because that got a lot more of the LA girls involved too. And once we were pulling in the Arizona teams and the LA girls, then we were getting at least, 5-6 teams. And that was kind of the start of that.
Starting to get a division. Alrighty, so I want to say we're kind of towards 2014, which is the goal for this portion, and definitely down to do a part 4. As we kind of talked about offline, maybe don't want to rush this, but we definitely kind of we got into things I want to talk about more, like the Dodgeball 10K in Toronto with Dodgeball Nation. I do want to dig more into UDC, and I also want to find out more about what your guys' perspectives were, after 2013 through 2014. So I think now would be a good time to stop. I did get some questions, but just looking at some of them, especially like Dan Levine's, these are probably going to go, they probably need like 40 minutes on their own. So I definitely want you guys to answer them separately. But if you guys are good, we'll just take a quick, part 3 break, and we'll pick up hopefully another week or so. Sound good? Sweet,
Sounds
thumbs
good.
up.
Sounds good. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, no problem. Alrighty, so that I guess we're gonna go ahead and just kind of cut it there. I was looking at the hour-and-a-half mark creep by. I'm thinking, okay, we probably should just push pause, see where we're at. Looks like we're kind of towards the 2014 timeframe, but there's a lot that happened that contributed to what we're calling the downfall of the NDL, and in terms of like the DWCs and all these other organizations that are coming out and really producing the type of dodgeball that has become the expectation that we know today. And so definitely want to do that justice. Don't want to rush it. So we're going to go ahead and continue with part 4. I hate to tease it, but probably sometime within the next week or two, given, Thanksgiving holidays and whatnot. But thanks to, Worlds being done, Elite Nationals being done, it'd be pretty fast and easy to get the guys together to do this again. So sorry to ask for questions and then not ask them, but I feel like that alone is probably another hour to get through them. However, if you have more, feel free to post them on these threads. I'll definitely do another call for questions just to add to what we already have, and we'll go from there. So if you're still listening, thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for asking and getting on me to produce a part 3. Definitely not going to take as much time to do part 4. And also, I did start, as I said before, reaching out slowly to some of the OGs that I would like to talk to in other regions. So keep that in mind. If you're listening and you're in the North, South, Pacific Northwest, what have you, and there's somebody you want to hear from, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to start planning this. So that way, when season 3 comes along, we just hit the ground running. It should be a lot of fun. So anyway, have a good rest of your weekend, good rest of your night, and we'll catch you next time.
So, Mark, do I send my highlight video into you for next year Worlds, or who do I send my highlight video to?
Your reffing highlight video?
No.